The velvet curtains of the grand opera house draped like night itself, soft and heavy with mystery. Gold leaf shimmered along the balcony rails, and crystal lights above sparkled like 100 tiny stars. From the street, the building looked like a palace. Inside, it felt like stepping into a story. Every whisper turned into music, and every glance seemed to carry a secret. Amara arrived a few minutes before the first bell, her steps careful on the red carpet. She wore a deep emerald dress that matched the glow of the exit signs and the green felt on the ushers' name tags. She had never owned a dress like this before, one that made her stand straight, one that made her feel seen. Tonight, everything felt different, the air, the way her skin tingled, the way her breathing slowed when she caught the scent of roses and polished wood. Her seat was in a private box 7 tucked halfway around the curve of the horseshoe balcony. It wasn't hers, her friend, a violinist in the orchestra, had given her the spare ticket with a half smile and a quiet warning. "You might be sharing the box," he'd said. "The donor who helped the company this season uses it sometimes. You'll be safe. He's polite." Amara had laughed. She didn't need safe, she told herself. She needed something that felt alive. The door to box 7 clicked softly behind her. The small room opened onto 2 red velvet chairs and a railing wrapped with brass finials. The view was perfect, the stage a living painting, the pit a dark ocean waiting for the first wave. She settled in, letting the plush seat hold her, and she ran a fingertip along the cool brass rail. The hall hummed with conversation low, sugar smooth. A couple in the next box argued in whispers about a necklace. Someone behind her sneezed gently. Somewhere far below, a program fell to the floor with a flat slap. Then she felt it, a presence at her back, steady and warm. Amara turned. He stood in the doorway, tall, with an elegant coat and an expression that was both curious and calm. His hair was neat, his tie was untied, as if he'd loosened it just before stepping inside. His eyes caught the chandelier light and held it, not like glass, but like still water. "Good evening," he said, and his voice was low, careful, almost like a cello. "Good evening," she replied, surprised at how soft her words came out. "I hope you don't mind box 7, right? I have a ticket." He smiled as if that amused him. "I would be worried if you were here without one." He stepped closer, closed the door with a gentle push, and offered his hand. "I'm Leon." "Amara," she said, taking his hand. His palm was cool, his grip firm. When he let go, the warmth stayed with her. The bell chimed. People took their seats. The house lights dimmed into a warm dusk. From the pit, bows found strings and settled like birds on wires. The conductor climbed, and silence rose like a tide. In that hush, Amara felt the hush inside her, too, a quiet that wasn't empty, a quiet that pulsed. As the overture began, she sat, and Leon took the chair beside her. He didn't speak, but she could sense the weight of him, the polite distance he kept, the way his attention faced the stage yet seemed aware of her in the same breath. The music unfurled, violins like silk, woodwinds like laughter, brass like a bright promise. Amara's shoulder brushed the edge of the armrest, and through the velvet she felt the tiniest vibration from the sound. Halfway through the first aria, Amara dared a glance. Leon watched the soprano with an intensity that was not about fame or habit. He watched like someone listening for truth. At that thought, something loosened in her chest. She watched him for a heartbeat longer than she should have, and he turned just enough to meet her eyes. It was only a second, but it felt like standing at the edge of a balcony and looking down at a moonlit street, the world both close and far, safe and thrilling. Between scenes, the curtain fell, the lights rose a little, the audience exhaled. In the small pause, Leon leaned closer, not enough to touch, but near enough that his words could be private. "First time?" he asked. "In a private box," she said. "I usually sit up high, where it feels like flying." "I like that," he said. "Flying?" He glanced at her dress, then looked back at the stage. "You chose the right color for tonight." "What color is tonight?" she asked, feeling a smile tug at her lips. "Emerald," he said. Hopeful. A little daring. Amara felt heat rise to her cheeks. She turned toward the stage again as the curtain lifted. The tenor came out, his voice smooth as poured honey. The scene changed to a night garden with silver arches and painted stars. Leon's breath caught almost imperceptibly at the same moment Amara's did. They heard it in each other, a tiny sound, a shared intake, and something electric bridged the space between their chairs. The scene ended. More applause, more soft light. Leon reached for the armrest, his fingers brushing the velvet near hers. He did not touch her hand, he hovered close, as if he were tracing a boundary and asking a question without words. Amara let her hand rest there, steady and warm. She did not move away. "Do you come often?" she asked, teasing herself for the old line and letting it hang anyway. "Often enough to recognize when the night is different," he replied. "And is it?" she asked. "Yes," he said simply. She considered asking why. But the next scene began, and the music asked for silence again. In that quiet, something started to write itself between them, a line, a phrase, an opening. Amara felt the story begin not on stage, but in this small box with the soft velvet and the golden glow and the sound of two people breathing at the same time, as if the air had decided to be generous. When the intermission finally came, Leon stood and offered his hand once more. "There's a small balcony at the back," he said. "Cool air. Good view of the chandelier." Amara rose. She placed her hand in his, and together they stepped into the half-dark corridor, leaving behind the music for a moment, carrying it with them anyway, like a secret that made their footsteps lighter. The corridor beyond Box 7 was quiet, lit by lantern-like sconces that glowed gold against the velvet wallpaper. Their footsteps echoed softly as Leon guided Amara toward the balcony he had mentioned. He walked with ease, as if the opera house belonged to him, though his manner was never boastful, only confident. When he pushed open the door, a cool stream of night air slipped in, brushing Amara's face like a secret. The balcony overlooked the grand chandelier through a cut-glass arch, the crystals below shimmering in 1,000 reflections. Outside, the city stretched wide and hushed, with its lamps glowing like fireflies across the dark streets. Amara drew in the chill air. "It feels unreal," she whispered. "Like I've stepped out of time." Leon leaned on the balustrade, his profile cast in moonlight. "That's why I come here," he said. "The opera is a world apart, but this," he gestured toward the chandelier and the city beyond. "This is the pause between two breaths." She smiled, liking the poetry in his words. "And do you share it with everyone you sit beside?" "No," he said simply. "Only when the evening asks for it." Their eyes met again, and this time the silence stretched, warm and charged. Amara became aware of the nearness of him, the faint scent of cedar and clean linen, the way his presence seemed to draw the night closer. She looked away, flustered, tracing the pattern of the railing with her fingertips. Leon noticed but said nothing. Instead, he drew a small silver case from his pocket. Peppermint, he asked, offering it. She laughed softly. That's unexpectedly old-fashioned. It helps when the music is heavy, he said, placing one on his tongue. She accepted one, the crisp sweetness dissolving coolly on her breath. For a moment, she imagined this was how conversations in old novels began, quiet exchanges in dim corners, simple gestures carrying weight. Tell me, Amara, Leon said after a pause. Do you come for the music, or the story? She considered. Both. The music moves me, but the story keeps me there. I like feeling as if I'm living inside someone else's heart. That explains the way you listen, he said. She tilted her head. What way is that? As if you're not just hearing the notes but collecting them, saving them, making them your own. Her cheeks warmed. She was not used to being observed so closely, and yet she didn't mind. Something about Leon's words made her feel seen rather than judged. And you? She asked, eager to shift the light back onto him. Why do you come? His expression softened, his gaze turning toward the chandelier. Because the world outside asks for masks. Here, the music removes them. Amaro let that settle in the air. It was a strangely intimate confession, though said without weight. She wondered what kind of masks a man like Leon wore. She wondered what his life beyond these velvet walls looked like, boardrooms, perhaps, or quiet libraries, or cities that smelled of salt and rain. Before she could ask, the bell chimed faintly inside, calling patrons back for the second act. Leon extended his hand again, formal yet warm. Shall we return? She placed her hand in his, noting how natural it felt, how her fingers fit against his with a strange ease. They walked back together, silent but unhurried, the peppermint still cool on her tongue. Inside box 7, the lights dimmed once more, the curtain rose, and the opera pulled them back into its world. This time, though, Amara felt a difference. She was not simply watching a story unfold on stage, she was also living one. As the soprano sang of forbidden love beneath painted moonlight, Amara's hand rested lightly on the velvet armrest again. Leon's hand was near, closer than before, his fingers almost brushing hers. The music swelled, violins lifting like wings. And in the quiet pause between two notes, their hands finally touched. Just a brush of skin, just enough to ignite a shiver. Neither pulled away. They watched the stage, but their thoughts moved elsewhere, weaving a story in the shadows of box 7, where desire stirred quietly, waiting for its moment to be heard. The opera's drama unfolded like a living painting, colors and voices colliding with intensity. Amara's heart beat faster, not just from the soprano's soaring notes, but from the warmth of Leon sitting beside her. She could feel it in the space between them, a tension neither dared to name yet, a quiet electricity that lingered like perfume. She stole a glance at him. Leon was watching the stage with a focused intensity, but his fingers twitched occasionally, brushing ever so lightly against the velvet of the armrest. Each accidental touch was a spark that raced up her arm and left her aware of every sound, every whisper of the music. The lights dimmed further as the second act's climax approached. The heroine of the opera wept silently on stage, and in the hush, Amara realized Leon had shifted slightly closer. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, and though their eyes never met, she sensed him watching her. "You're quiet," he murmured, his voice a soft vibration against the rising music. "I'm absorbing it," she said, her own voice barely above a whisper. Her throat felt tight, and she swallowed hard. "It's beautiful." Leon nodded, but his gaze lingered on her, sharp and discerning. "It is," he said, but sometimes the music isn't the only thing worth noticing. Amara felt her breath catch. His words were casual, but the meaning underneath was not. She looked down at her lap, hard hammering, and tried to concentrate on the stage. But the notes swirled around her, mingling with the awareness of his presence beside her, and she realized she had never been so conscious of another person in a theater before. The soprano's final high note cut through the air, a sharp, crystalline sound, and for a heartbeat the world held its breath. Amara turned slightly toward Leon. Their eyes met, and it was as if the stage had fallen away. For a moment, there was only the two of them, the air between them thick and warm. "Do you feel that?" she asked softly, unsure if she meant the music or the moment or both. "I do," he said. His hand brushed hers, deliberate this time, resting lightly atop hers on the armrest. It was brief, almost innocent, yet it sent a wave of warmth that made her knees feel weak. "It's the pause before the storm," he whispered, leaning closer so that she could feel the faint scent of cedar and rain in his coat. Amara's pulse raced. She wanted to say something, to respond, but the music returned, and the orchestra swept them both into a tide of sound. Yet even as the violins soared, her fingers remained lightly pressed against his. The touch was electric, a tether between them, unspoken but understood. The curtain fell, drawing applause like a wave over the theater. People clapped, rising from their seats, but Amara didn't move. She was aware of the heat of Leon's hand against hers, and she didn't want to let go. "You have a way of noticing," Leon said quietly, not taking his hand away. "Most people are caught up in the music, but you notice everything. Even the spaces between things." Amara swallowed again, heart thudding. I try," she admitted. Her voice was trembling, and she wished she could be braver, wished she could tell him how the smallest brush of his fingers made her feel. He smiled, that small, knowing smile that made her shiver. "Good," he said. "I like when people notice. It makes the silence richer." Their eyes met again, longer this time, and in that gaze, Amara felt something unspoken pass between them. It was neither words nor promises, but a recognition of the tension, the curiosity, and the undeniable pull. The theater emptied gradually, but they lingered, neither wanting to move, neither wanting to break the fragile spell. The last echoes of the orchestra faded into memory, leaving only the quiet hum of anticipation in Box 7. Leon shifted closer still, and she could feel the heat of his body, the subtle weight of expectation. He didn't speak, but his proximity was a language all its own. Finally, he said, "There's a quiet street cafe nearby. Shall we go? The night doesn't have to end with the opera." Amara nodded, almost too quickly, and felt the thrill of following him into a world that felt entirely their own. The air outside the opera house was cool again, brushing against her skin, but now it carried something else: possibility, danger, and a soft, simmering promise that neither of them could ignore. As they walked together into the night, the city lights reflected in her eyes, and she realized with a start that the opera was no longer just a performance. The true drama had begun, and it was theirs alone. The streets were quiet, cobblestones glistening under the soft glow of the city lights. Amara followed Leon, her senses alert, every nerve tingling. The night air was cool against her skin, but the warmth between them made her feel as if she were walking through fire. They reached a small cafe tucked into a corner, the kind with wrought iron tables and candles flickering in delicate holders. Inside, it was intimate, almost private, and the low hum of conversation wrapped around them like a soft blanket. Leon led her to a table by the window, and they sat across from each other, eyes locked even as they ordered espresso. The moment they were alone, the quiet intensity returned. Leon's gaze was steady, unwavering, and Amara felt herself drawn in, unable to look away. She wanted to speak, to bridge the space between them, but the words tangled in her throat. "You're different," Leon said suddenly, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "Most people in the city rush past life, caught up in routines, distractions. But you notice. You feel. You, wait." Amara blushed, stirring her espresso with trembling fingers. "I don't know if I'm different," she murmured, "but I do try to notice things. Moments. People." Leon smiled, that subtle, knowing smile that made her pulse jump. "Moments like this," he said, leaning slightly forward. "Where the world fades, and there's only what's real." The candle flickered between them, and for a moment, Amara thought she could feel his heartbeat across the table. She wanted to reach out, to close the distance, but something held her back, a delicious tension, like the pause before the next note in an opera. "Do you ever regret noticing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "When it leads to complications?" Leon's eyes softened. "Not if it leads me to something worth feeling," he said. His fingers brushed against hers, and this time she didn't pull away. The touch was gentle but insistent, sending shivers up her arm and grounding her in the present. The cafe was nearly empty now, the soft strains of a piano playing in the background. Time seemed to stretch, slowing around them, allowing the space between them to thrum with unspoken words. Amara felt her courage rise, and she leaned slightly forward. I feel something," she admitted, her voice trembling with honesty. "Something I can't control." Leon's gaze darkened, and the corner of his mouth curved into a half smile. "I feel it too," he said. "And I don't think either of us should pretend we don't." Her heart raced. She had never met someone who could match the intensity she felt, someone who could make her aware of every touch, every breath, every glance. She wanted to speak, to tell him everything she was thinking, but words seemed unnecessary. The silence between them was charged, heavy with possibility. Finally, Leon spoke again, softer this time. "Amara, there's a risk, but some risks are worth taking." He reached across the table, his fingers curling lightly around hers. "Do you trust me?" She hesitated, then nodded, unable to resist the pull. "Yes," she whispered. A slow, deliberate smile spread across his face, and the tension in the air shifted, a heady mix of excitement and anticipation. Their hands lingered together on the table, the warmth between them spreading like fire through her chest. The night deepened, and the city outside became a blur of light and shadow. They talked quietly, sharing fragments of their lives, secrets, and dreams. Every glance, every smile, every touch was a silent confession, building a connection neither had expected. As the cafe began to close, Leon stood, offering his hand. Amara took it, feeling the electricity again, and together they stepped out into the night. The streets were quieter now, the moon casting silver light across the pavement. Leon walked closer, his arm brushing hers, and for a moment, the world fell away. He stopped, turning to face her. "Amara," he murmured, "I don't want this night to end." She met his gaze, her heart racing. "Neither do I," she admitted. And under the moonlight, with the city as their witness, they took a step closer, the space between them shrinking, every heartbeat in sync. The opera, the theater, the music, they were all echoes of what had started between them, but this was something entirely new. Something raw, unspoken, and impossible to ignore. The night was theirs, and the world beyond the city streets could wait. The moon hung low over the city, spilling silver across the rooftops as Amara and Leon walked side by side, their fingers brushing now and then, each touch sending a spark that neither could ignore. The night air was thick with possibility, a heady mix of desire and uncertainty. Leon guided her through narrow streets and alleys, places where the city's hum softened into whispers. He finally stopped in front of an old, abandoned theater. Its grand facade had long lost its former glory, but there was still something hauntingly beautiful about it: the faded frescoes, the chipped marble steps, the velvet curtains, worn but still holding echoes of applause and whispered secrets. "This place," Leon said, his voice low, "used to be my escape when life felt too loud. No one comes here anymore." Amaro looked at him, the shadows of the broken chandeliers stretching across his face, and felt a pull she couldn't resist. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "In a strange, broken way." Leon smiled, stepping closer. "Sometimes the broken places are the most honest," he said, and before she could respond, he offered his hand. "Dance with me." She hesitated only for a moment, then placed her hand in his. The theater was empty, but the silence was alive, filled with memories and possibilities. He led her to the center of the stage, their bodies close enough that she could feel his warmth, the steady beat of his pulse matching her own. There was no music, only the quiet echo of their movements. And yet, it felt like the orchestra was playing just for them. Leon's hands guided her gently, confidently, as if he had been waiting for this moment all his life. Amara's head tilted back slightly, letting herself be led, and she realized with a rush that she trusted him completely. Every step, every sway, every subtle pressure of his hand against hers or her back made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. Her breath quickened, her pulse racing not just from the dance, but from the awareness that Leon was closer than anyone had ever been. "You have no idea," he murmured near her ear, "how long I've waited for someone like you." She shivered, the words igniting something deep inside her. I've never felt like this before," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Like every part of me is awake." Leon's gaze darkened, intense and focused. "You're beautiful when you're honest," he said, his thumb brushing over the back of her hand. "And I want to see more of that. I want to feel more of that." The tension between them grew, the space between desire and action shrinking with every heartbeat. Leon leaned in, brushing his lips lightly against her temple, and Amara's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to pull back, to resist, but she couldn't. The gravity between them was irresistible. Their dance slowed, the world narrowing until it was just the two of them, swaying in the fading moonlight. Leon's hand slid to her waist, drawing her closer, and she felt the heat of him through the thin fabric of her dress. Every inch of her skin tingled, every nerve alive to the possibility of what might come next. "Amara," he whispered, his lips close to hers, "do you trust me?" She nodded, words failing her, her heart pounding too loudly for speech. Then, with a gentleness that surprised her, Leon captured her lips in a kiss soft at first, exploratory, testing the boundaries of desire. Her hands rose to his shoulders, and the kiss deepened, urgent and claiming, as if they had both been waiting for this release for years. Time seemed to stretch and bend around them, the broken theater no longer abandoned but alive with their passion. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering in rhythm with their movements. Amara's mind went blank, consumed entirely by the warmth of Leon, the taste of him, the way his hands held her steady yet demanded surrender. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the silence was no longer empty but full of promise. Amara's cheeks were flushed, her chest heaving, and she realized with startling clarity that nothing would ever feel the same again. Leon brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his eyes softening. "This night," he murmured, "it's ours. Whatever happens next. I want to face it with you." Amara felt a thrill of certainty. I want that too," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind inside her. They stood together in the moonlit theater, the world outside forgotten. The dance had been just the beginning, an awakening, a declaration that what they felt was real and undeniable. And as they left the theater, fingers intertwined, the promise of what was to come hung in the air, electric and intoxicating, a secret only they shared. The cab ride back to Leon's apartment was quiet, the city lights flickering over Amara's face like liquid gold. She felt the lingering warmth of their kiss at the theater, a fire that seemed to have taken root deep inside her, spreading with every heartbeat. Leon glanced at her from time to time, his dark eyes unreadable yet intense, and each look sent a shiver down her spine. When they arrived, he paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "Are you sure?" he asked softly, "not just about coming inside, but about taking the next step?" Amara smiled, her nerves trembling into something more exciting than fear. "I've never been more sure of anything," she said. And with that, she followed him inside. The apartment was as she imagined, modern, elegant, with a touch of vintage charm that gave it warmth. But what caught her attention was a door at the end of a dimly lit hallway, slightly ajar, revealing a soft amber glow. Leon noticed her gaze and smirked. "Curious?" he asked. "You could say that," she replied, moving closer. He took her hand and guided her to the door. "This is my sanctuary," he whispered. "No one ever comes here. Just me, the music, and, sometimes, company I choose." Stepping inside, Amara's breath caught. The room was intimate, a small lounge with plush velvet chairs, a low table scattered with candles, and a record player spinning an old jazz record. The soft saxophone filled the space, wrapping around them like a tender embrace. Leon turned to her, closing the door behind them. "I wanted this for us," he said, voice husky. "A place where we can be free, and honest about what we want." Amara felt a rush of heat at his words, at the way he looked at her, as if she were the only person in existence. I want to be honest," she said, her voice trembling with excitement and anticipation. Leon stepped closer, and this time, there was no hesitation between them. He brushed a lock of hair from her face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw, and then leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that was deeper, more consuming than any before. She melted into him, their bodies pressing together as the music swirled around them. His hands roamed her back, then slid to her hips, pulling her even closer. Amara could feel the heat radiating from him, and a thrill ran through her that was part fear, part desire, part sheer exhilaration. She wanted more, and he seemed to know, responding with the same intensity that matched her own. Breaking the kiss, Leon murmured against her lips, "Do you trust me?" "I do," she whispered, her hands tangled in his hair. "Completely." He smiled, a slow, deliberate smile, and guided her to a velvet chair near the record player. Gently, he seated her, then knelt before her, brushing his lips along her neck, down to her collarbone. Every touch sent shivers through her body, every caress awakening sensations she hadn't known could exist. Amara gasped softly, her fingers clutching the fabric of his shirt, wanting more, needing more. Leon's eyes met hers, dark and unwavering, and she felt herself surrender entirely, letting the moment take her completely. The record player crackled, the music mingling with the sound of their breathing, the room now alive with desire. Leon's hands traced her curves, mapping her like a secret he'd been waiting to explore. Each touch was deliberate, careful, yet charged with urgency, a balance that made her heart race and her mind spin. Amara leaned back into the velvet chair, letting herself be guided, letting herself feel every inch of the growing connection between them. She realized that this was not just desire, it was intimacy, a raw and undeniable pull towards something deeper, something neither of them could resist. As the night deepened, the boundaries between them blurred, the room a private world where only the two of them existed. Amara's senses were on fire, every look, every touch, every whispered word igniting her in ways she hadn't known were possible. And when Leon finally lifted his gaze to meet hers, a silent promise in his eyes, she knew that what had started as curiosity and intrigue had transformed into something far more powerful, something neither time nor circumstance could ever undo. The hidden room, the music, the flicker of candlelight, they all became witnesses to the connection they were forging, one touch at a time, one heartbeat at a time, each moment more intoxicating than the last. The city outside had quieted, leaving only the hum of distant traffic and the occasional whisper of the wind against the windows. Inside Leon's sanctuary, the air was thick with anticipation, charged with the tension that had been building all evening. Amara's heart raced, a wild rhythm that matched the beat of the music now spinning softly from the record player. Leon's hands traced her arms, then her shoulders, memorizing the contours of her body as if committing her entirely to memory. His gaze was unyielding, dark with desire yet softened by a tenderness that made her knees weak. She shivered under the intensity of his touch, the warmth of his breath against her neck sending sparks that ran straight to the core of her. "Amara," he murmured, his voice low and commanding, yet filled with a vulnerability that pulled her closer. "I've wanted this, wanted you, from the moment I saw you at the opera." Her breath caught at his words. The memory of their first encounter, the stolen glances, the subtle smiles, the undeniable magnetism flashed through her mind. It had led them here, to this room, to this moment, and she felt both fear and exhilaration swirl together like the crescendo of a symphony. "I've wanted you too," she whispered, her voice trembling with honesty and need. I can't fight it anymore." Leon smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of his lips that made her pulse race. He leaned in, capturing her mouth in a kiss that was both tender and insistent. She responded instinctively, wrapping her arms around his neck, pulling him closer as if to fuse their bodies into one. Every touch was electric, every caress igniting a fire that neither could extinguish. He guided her to the center of the room, where the glow of candlelight painted their shadows against the walls. Leon's hands moved with confident reverence, exploring, teasing, awakening every nerve ending with careful precision. Amara's breaths came faster, her body arching toward him, yearning for more, needing to feel the full force of this connection. "Amara, look at me," Leon whispered, lifting her chin so their eyes met. The intensity of his gaze stripped away her inhibitions. In his eyes, she saw desire, longing, and a profound reverence that made her feel cherished, wanted, and utterly alive. She let herself surrender completely, allowing the sensations to wash over her, every brush of his fingers, every whispered word amplifying the passion between them. The music swelled, a gentle crescendo that mirrored the rhythm of their hearts, each note punctuating the rising tension, each beat drawing them closer to an inevitable climax of emotion and desire. Leon's lips traveled down her neck, lingering at the sensitive curve of her collarbone before moving lower, each kiss leaving a trail of fire in its wake. Amara's hands tangled in his hair, holding him, guiding him, urging him closer, their movements a dance of mutual desire and unspoken understanding. Time seemed to stretch, each second elongated by the intensity of their connection. The world outside ceased to exist, there was only the room, the music, and the magnetic pull between them. They moved together as if orchestrated by some unseen conductor, every sigh, every touch, every shared breath composing a symphony of their own making. Finally, when the tension reached its peak, they paused, gazes locked, hearts pounding in unison. The intimacy between them was no longer just physical, it had become something deeper, a merging of desires, vulnerabilities, and unspoken promises. Amara felt it in the warmth of his hand, in the intensity of his eyes, in the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against hers. Leon pulled her close one last time, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling, lips brushing in tender acknowledgement of the fire that had consumed them. "You're incredible," he whispered. "I've never felt anything like this." Amara smiled, a mixture of breathless satisfaction and emotional release. "Neither have I," she admitted softly, her voice thick with the weight of everything they had shared. As the music played its final notes, they remained entwined, the candlelight flickering across their faces, illuminating the aftermath of their passion and the birth of something far more profound than either had expected. Desire had brought them together, but connection, intimacy, and trust had cemented the bond that now pulsed between them, stronger, deeper, and more intoxicating than anything they had ever known. In that hidden room, with the city lights twinkling outside, Amara and Leon discovered a truth beyond desire: some moments, some encounters, transcend words. They exist purely in the space between heartbeats, in the fire of a glance, in the lingering warmth of a touch. And in that sacred space, they found each other and themselves completely.